my mom's side of the family, my grandfather's father's side. So he came from Odessa, Russia, and I'm not sure why he came to America, but my guess is probably to have a better life because that's why most of my relatives came to America. Um, did he leave family back there? I'm not sure. I didn't know. I don't know. I couldn't get that information. Um, he did come straight to the US. And when he came to Ellis Island, I don't know what his original last name was, but it was changed to Marcus in Ellis Island. He came to the Lower East Side, as did most of my relatives, and he didn't really face that many hardships. I mean, I guess he did, but I know he was poor and that he struggled with getting a job at first. And I know that my grandfather's father had to quit school during the Great Depression because they didn't have enough money. So he had to become a truck driver. How did his Jewish life change? I feel like none of my relatives, like the Jewish life really changed because, I mean, none of us really converted to Christianity, still went to temple. We all got more reformed, but other than that, I'm not sure how it really changed because it didn't change that much. Okay. My grandfather's mother's side. She was Dora Klau and she came from Austria-Hungary. She left her native country to have a better future. I'm not sure if she left family back in Austria. My guess is yes, because my grandfather said that she didn't have any relatives when she came to America, so she probably did leave family back in Hungary. She did come straight to the US and she settled in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. She was alone and she was poor, so that was part of the struggles that she faced. And future generations just became more and more reformed. And classes there, like when my grandfather went to school in the Bronx, the classes were over 90% Jewish, but when my mom went to school in Long Island, classes were only 20 to 25% Jewish. So the percentage of Jewish people who stayed in New York greatly declined.
Or the parts of New York that they lived in.
Yes, that is true. My grandfather also taught in the Bronx, so he said that his classes there, only like 30% of the people were Jewish still. Okay, so my grandmother's father's side, his name was Morris Moshevitz, and it was later changed to Moskowitz. I'm not sure when, but sometime along the generations it was changed. He came to America probably to have a better future. I'm pretty sure he came straight to America and he settled in the Lower East Side of Manhattan.
Well,
Oh wait, yeah. Wait,
France.
sorry, I was on the wrong slide. He came from a part of Russia that is now Poland. His parents wanted him to have a better future, which is why he immigrated to America. He did come straight to America, and
he went to France first. He went to France and then he came to America.
wait, the slide's not the same.
Yeah.
1 second. Let me go back. On my computer, it's not the same as the one on. Oh. 1 second. Okay, now it's the same. Sorry, it was a different slide. Okay. He came from a part of Russia that is now Poland. He left his family at a young age and traveled alone on foot to France when he was about 16 or 17 because his parents really wanted him to have a better future. He went to France, was a shoemaker, and then he boarded a ship and went to America. He settled in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and they were poor and they were not doing too well at first because what he did for a job was he painted houses and apartments, and then Morris had a heart attack. So that kind of hurt the family a lot. And Rebecca later on had 2 strokes. but the Jewish part of their family didn't really change because they still went to temple and no one converted. This is Morris and Rebecca, and then this is also Morris and Rebecca, and this is Morris, and this is in 1937, 1953, and the 1940s. Okay. Then on this slide, my grandmother's mother's side, my great great uncle, who was my great grandmother's brother, actually wrote a book on his family history. It's mostly about him working for NASA, but he does have a couple paragraphs, or not a couple paragraphs, a couple chapters on what his family history was like. So he came, Luis Shapiro, my great great grandfather, came to America from Vladimir Volinsk. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but also known as Ludmir. And he only came with $300, and he came with his 16-year-old brother Nathan, and he had to take care of him. He did leave family back in Russia, and all 33 relatives that stayed in Ludmir died in the Holocaust, sadly. He got a job in a sweatshop when he came here because he had tailor training after he stopped serving in the Russian army. I'm not sure when it says by way of Italy, I wasn't exactly sure what that meant. Like, did they stop in Italy or?
They probably, yeah, that's probably just where he boarded the ship.
Okay, so
He
yeah,
he had to get to Italy from Poland, and then
yeah.
by the time, whatever, when he got there, then that's how he got to America from there. So everybody came from, you saw some of your family came from Paris, some came from Holland, some came from Italy. So most of them went to the Mediterranean countries, sailed out of there. Yep.
So yeah, so he did sort of come straight to America because he didn't stop in Italy to get a job or anything like that. He settled in downtown New York City, and they were poor, and Luis had to work in a sweatshop to support him and his brother because none of his other family was here. And then the Jewish side didn't change much at all. This.
Wait, you skipped over his wife.
Oh, okay, yeah, that wasn't part of the question, so I didn't know if you wanted to know that. Yeah. My great great grandfather worked in a wood turning factory. They lived in Grand Street in Lower Manhattan, and my great great grandmother had to give up her schooling at 12 and got a job in a sweatshop, and she only earned 5 cents an hour, which wasn't really enough to support the family, but it helped. And in 1906, her youngest brother died of appendicitis. My great great grandparents got married in 1910, and then my great grandparents, my great great aunts and uncles were born, and my great great grandfather actually opened a candy stand, and then it got turned into a store, so that was cool. Then the first picture on the left is Luis with my great uncle Harold in 1948 in front of the family candy store, and then on the right are my Aunt Frances and my Uncle Murray getting married. These are my great-grandparents, Irene and Sam Moskowitz, and those are my two great-great-grandfathers, Morris and Louise, talking together before they died. That's my grandparents on the left and my great-grandparents on the right. These are just my ancestors. I got this from a lady that my great-great-uncle Ralph knew, and she was really into genealogy, so she found all of this.
Wait, hold a second. Let me just look a little bit. No, go back. Just see if we were, no, yeah, let me just see it one more time, see if there's any of these people we know from some of these names. I mean, these are not uncommon names, right? But see if there's anybody who Anybody here might know.
Should I keep going?
No, I'm just give me one more second.
Okay.
So you can see some of your family's names are Teitelbaum and Shapiro and Moskowitz and Marcus, obviously. But do you know what any of these names mean? Very common, it's very, very like kind of normal Jewish names. Do you know what any of these names mean?
Like the meaning of the
Yeah.
names?
So
I'm not sure.
most of the names in your family are Yiddish words, but I'll show this, with other people if you have the names of your family. But a lot of these names, remember, people didn't have last names until about 200 years ago, and then they were kind of forced to take names. And some people got really nice names. Some people didn't get nice names. Some people paid to have nicer names. Um,
That's cool.
so sometimes like the name uh, Shapiro, for example, oftentimes means beautiful from the word for sapphire or originally, but there's a lot of variations of that. Some people think it again was like a for like uh, a nice name that people would pay for. Teitelbaum means like a date palm tree, which is nice image.
I do.
Moskowitz is actually, if your father's name was Moshe, you'd be the son of Moshe, which would be Moshe. Vitz or Witz at the end of a name is actually Russian or Slavic. It means son of. So
Yeah, I have a
Moscow,
lot
son of
of
Moshe.
Russian.
So I mean somebody's ancestor. One of those people originally, Sam's family was there was a Moshe, and his name was Moshowitz, which is son of Moshe, and then Moshowitz often became Moskowitz. So these are names again that people would have either based on where they came from, what their occupation was, or in some cases, who their parents were, because then the name became set. If your name was something, if you were the son of so and so, then that name became the name for the whole family. So it's the same, by
Yeah.
the way, in English, where you have the name Anderson or Peterson. Somebody's name was Peter, and you were Peter's son, and then that became the name for the family. So
Yeah.
this
I
stuff.
know a lot of my relatives, their last names were changed when they immigrated to America because the immigration police or whatever, they couldn't pronounce it.
Yep.
So they changed it. Wait,
Sometimes
I'm
got
going to
changed.
check something really fast.
There you go.
No, okay. And then this is the passenger manifest
Mhm.
for my ancestor. I don't even know how many greats it was, but I don't know how to pronounce that.
Dvorak.
Devorah Teitelbaum and her three children. Their names are on lines 9 to 12, and the father had already immigrated to the U.S.
Mhm.
And then these are all my descendants. I'm not going to read all of them because that would take too long, but I thought it was cool. So
Wait, just hold it for 1 second. Just looking at some of the family here. That's awesome. Okay, that's cool.
can I move on?
Yeah, we found a couple of years ago, somebody did a family tree on my wife, on Tracy's family. Turned out one of the people in the temple was like a seventh cousin of hers. And remember, my wife comes from England. I mean, she's Jewish, but her family came from Poland and Russia, like most people's. But I was looking through it and I saw Stevenson Ranch popped out, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's a member of our temple. It turned out it was a seventh cousin of hers. So
Wow, that's so like far away.
that's crazy,
Seven,
right?
yeah.
The fact you'd
Okay.
even know that. But there, I see Sophia over here, April 29th, with her brother, sister.
Mhm.
There you are. All right,
Yeah.
cool.
Okay, and then this is the passenger manifest with some of my Shapiro ancestors.
That's great.
Chaim and Nate Shapiro on lines 2 and 3. So
That's
these
awesome.
also came from my great uncle Ralph's when he was in a assisted living care. He met someone who like they were friends and stuff, and she was really into genealogy, so she found all this stuff. I wouldn't have any of this, the passenger manifest, the relatives chart, anything without her. So I'm really grateful to her. Onto my dad's side of the family. My grandfather's mother's father's side. So this is my great grandmother's father's side. My great great grandfather, Goya, I think is how you pronounce it, Zimmerman. He came from Minsk, Russia, and I'm not sure why he came to America, but he definitely did leave family in back in Russia. Yeah. He immigrated after college. He got a degree in math, and that's all I know about his life in Russia. He did immigrate to the Lower East Side, and they were average poor for the Lower East Side. They didn't do terribly, but they weren't rich, of course. He had a clothes cleaning business, and their Jewish life didn't change much. They still went to temple. Some relatives did marry Christians, and so that side of some of my relatives are now Christians. But other than that, almost everyone is still Jewish. And my great 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 grandmother had 9 kids, I think. Yeah. And then my great grandmother was Rose. Or Manya, sorry. And then, okay, my grandfather's mother's side. So that's my great grandmother's mother's side. She came from Nikolish. Is that how you pronounce it? She came from Nikolish, Russia, to escape and have a better life. She had to lie and say she was 14 when she was 12 because she had to come alone because her sisters were already in America. Her father was dead, and her brothers were too young to immigrate, so her mother had to stay there with them. She left those family members back in Russia, and she never saw her mother again as she died of typhoid. Manya immigrated to America, the Lower East Side, and she worked as a seamstress and had to clean her aunt's house when she was very young. So she died young from, I think she died young, I'm pretty sure, from stress or something like that. I wasn't sure, so I didn't put it in the slide, but I'm pretty sure that's what my great grandmother had said. Yeah. And then, okay. This is my grandfather's mother's life growing up. My great great grandfather, oh wait, sorry. That slide, I'm going to skip that because that is not part of the family history. That's my great grandmother's life growing up. So I don't know. Do you want me to read that or do you want me to skip that?
Oh, it's okay.
Okay. My grandfather's father's side. My great great grandmother, Sadie Barrett's, came from Poland, and she had to leave because she was part of the resistance there, but she would have been killed if she didn't immigrate. So that's why she immigrated. I'm not sure if she left family back in Poland. My guess is yes. She immigrated to Boston, and she was poor, and her husband divorced her, so she struggled finding money and finding a job to support her family. The rest of the family just became more reformed, and that the Jewish side didn't change that much. My family was actually very Orthodox until my grandmother or my grandfather.
It did change. I mean, changing religions is not what I mean to say, right? You don't have to change religions to change your observance. If you go from Orthodox lifestyle to less Orthodox or not Orthodox lifestyle, that's a change, right? So if you keep kosher and only eat kosher food and now you don't eat kosher food, that's a change. If you keep Shabbos and you don't walk, you don't drive or do anything but walk on Shabbos and don't not use electricity, and then now you do, it's a change. It's a different lifestyle. So it doesn't mean that you've changed religions. It just means that your Jewish practice is a little different.
Yeah, I know my great grandma Ethel, she was Orthodox, but she didn't participate in like not doing anything on Saturday and just celebrating with her family. Like I know she wasn't the type of Orthodox where she wouldn't press like a TV screen button to turn on the TV or that kind of thing. But then when she had my grandpa Gil, he was not Orthodox at all, and it just became more reform.
Yep. But again, that's a change, and that is very common. What I want everybody to understand is that if your family came from Russia or Poland in the 1900s, almost all those people who came from Russia and Poland lived Orthodox lives. So by the 1900s, as we talked about, the German Jews who were already living here for a couple of generations in America, the ones who came in the 1840s and 50s, the Levi Strauss generation of Jews who came primarily from Germany, many of those people were already Reformed Jews by that point and were not living Orthodox lifestyles. So that's just the one thing I want you to kind of keep in mind. All right, thanks. But again, that's why I asked the question, because this is very common. Very, very normal.
And this is this is either the last slide or the second to last slide. Okay. So this is my dad's side of the family still, my grandmother's father's side. Samuel Meltzer was my great-great-grandfather, and he came from Russia. I'm not sure what town that was lost when my grandmother's mother died. He immigrated to Brooklyn in the early 1900s. He was a kosher butcher, and he had a sister named Ray and a brother named Nathan. In my dad's side of the family, especially my grandmother's side, I have a long line of like cooks. So that's why, as you'll see in the next few paragraphs, there were a lot of restaurants that were owned. Sam married Bella in 1918. Bella came from Austria. She immigrated to Brooklyn. She had 3 brothers. Bella was supposedly really nice, and she would always take in new immigrants. So sometimes they would struggle with money because they were also paying for other immigrants to stay with them, but she would never refuse any other immigrants. Bella actually saved Sam's life because he was going to be hit by a car, but she pushed him aside and got hit by the car. She survived because she was at a different angle, but she also had injuries. But back then, she didn't go to the hospital. So her leg, when it healed, it healed wrong because there were too many diseases. And if she had tried to have surgery, she would probably have died from an infection. They had 4 kids, and they had 3 restaurants. One of them was J&M Meat Market, and then there was a restaurant called the Candelabra, and then Milton and Jack moved to Long Island in 1955 and opened Mill J's, which this is Bella and Sam, and they're surrounded by their children. And then on the right is Bella and Sam's wedding. And then over here is the Candelabra, like I was talking about. It was a fancier restaurant. And so that's why where they got most of their profit, because they would cater. And then this on the right is actually pretty cool, because if you look at the top left and the middle left picture, that's my dad and my aunt. And so that was an ad put in the newspaper. And then
wait, go back. I wanted to see it quickly. Wow, that's really cool. So they put their grandkids into the ad, right?
And the other kids, I think, were just models or whatever.
Well, they could have been your well, they could have been cousins.
I don't think it was, because I was talking to my grandma and she said that she doesn't know those kids. And so I was her father. So I'm pretty sure they were just random kids.
That's cool.
Maybe kids that they knew.
Yep.
My dad's side of the family, last slide. This is the last slide. My grandmother's mother's side. So my great-great-great-grandmother, Rose Green, it was either Rose Greenberg or we didn't know the last part of the name. And she came to America. She was from Russia. I don't know where in Russia. She married Samuel Mazerovsky, but it was shortened to Samuel Mazur, so that's what their surname was. Samuel taught himself to read and write English, and they had 5 children. Lillian was my great great grandmother, so Rose and Sam's children. Yeah, Rose and Sam's daughter. She married Harry Lifton, who had immigrated from Latvia, Russia. His parents were Rachel and Mayer, and his siblings were Danny, Tilly, Ida, Clara, and Jenny. And it's actually pretty interesting because he immigrated because otherwise he would have been probably kidnapped as a child. His father was wealthy, so robbers murdered him and tried to kidnap Harry, and his family immediately sent him away because they were afraid that the robbers would come back. And that side of the family was actually pretty wealthy because Harry became a jeweler and he worked for Van Cleef and Arpels. And then they had my grandmother and my great aunts and uncles. And that's Mayor on the left. And then on the right, that's young Harry after his father was killed. Harry's family in the United States before he got married on the left. And then Lily and Harry with Lily's sister Miriam on the right. And that's it.
Really interesting. Wow, that's a lot of information, everybody, right?
I had so much. I was trying to figure out a way to compact it down so that it wouldn't be like a 40-minute presentation.
It was fantastic. What do you think, guys?
I'm gonna stop screen sharing. Okay. Should I stop?
Sam, yeah. So Sammy and Xander, any questions? What questions do we have for Sophia before we move on?
Can't think of any questions.
No questions?
I mean, I don't.
Sammy.
No, not really.
No, well, you better come up with some good questions because we're going to come up with questions for you. So let me ask you a question, Sophia. What was the most surprising or interesting thing you learned about your family that you didn't know?
I thought it was really interesting that Mayer was murdered because most of my family was just pretty straightforward. Like they wanted to have a better life. They immigrated, which not to say that isn't interesting, but it's not as interesting as he was murdered and they had to come here. Oh, also another interesting thing was that my great grandmother's cousin on my dad's grandmother's side was actually a sniper in World War II, and she killed about 1,000 Nazis over her lifetime.
I saw that. Victoria. That's a great story. Don't you want to
Yeah.
know more about that story? Make that a movie.
Yeah, I did, but my great grandmother, she's almost 100. She'll be 100 in May, I think it is. And she remembered so much stuff, but she didn't remember much about that part of the family because she was a child when she immigrated. So
Yep. That's amazing that she's still alive.
yeah. And she's still going strong.
Amazing.
Okay, I'm gonna leave on my computer.
Okay. Very good. Very good job, man. That's a hard act to follow, everybody. But Sammy or Xander, who wants to go next?
I can go next.
All right. All right, Xander, you're up. And you're a co-host, so you can take it away.
And just know that all of this is on my dad's mother's side, since I wasn't able to get any other sides because they have very little information.
What do you mean, your mom's side?
No, my dad's side.
Oh,
My
on your dad's
mother's
side. Gotcha. Okay. Let me hear it.
It says I'm not allowed to screen share.
Okay. You can't do it?
It's for some reason not working for me. It says host disabled participant in screen sharing.
Hold it a second. Uh, you're a co-host now. Now you weren't a co-host, I guess, before. Go for it. You're a co-host now.
There we go. There there we go. All right, so this is my family's Jewish life in America. And this picture is the ship that my great grandmother Rose and her family sailed into America on. So, what country, city, and or village did my Jewish relatives come from? My great grandmother Rose came from Belarus in Russia in the town of Rashika. My great grandfather Jack came from a town called Cherigov in the Ukraine. And this photo is from Cherigov, overlooking the area where my great grandfather Jack Franco was born and lived. So why did they leave their native country? They left in the early 1900s because of the persecution of Jews. The Jews were always under siege, their property was destroyed, they could not own land, and it was hard to find work. And this picture is a ladle that my great grandmother took from Russia. My grandmother always uses the ladle when serving soup on Jewish holidays to this day.
Wow.
Did they leave family back in their native country? My great grandfather left his mother, father, two sisters, brother, aunts, uncles, and cousins. He was 14 when he left Russia because he would have been drafted to the Russian army. During World War II, the rest of his family went to Siberia. My great uncles came to the US in 1978 and they were reunited, but Jack never saw his other family ever again. My great grandmother came to the US in 1913 with her parents, three sisters, and two brothers when she was 3.5 years old. They did not leave anyone behind. And the picture is Jack's family in Russia holding his photo. Did they come straight to the United States? And what city did they first come to in the United States? My great grandfather's ship landed in Canada first, and then he went on a train to the US into Chicago to go to an uncle and aunt who were sponsoring him. My great grandmother arrived straight to the US at Ellis Island in New York, then settled in Wisconsin for a few years, and then went to Chicago. And the pictures are my great grandfather Jack's papers that he used in order to come to America. What challenges did they face when they came to the US? My great grandfather had to learn English, find a place to live, and go to a boarding house when he was 16 to learn a profession so that he could support himself. He never had more schooling. He went to Jewish People's Institute, which took people with no skills or languages, and he went to classes there to learn a trade and English. My great grandmother had to learn English. She spoke Russian and Yiddish. So she started school with a lot of other immigrants. She and her family stopped speaking Russian because it was important for them to assimilate being American. She went through 9th grade, but she had to quit school to help support her family. And this picture is the leather holder that my father kept his immigration papers in from Russia. He either brought it with him or got it when he came to America. And this is the final slide. My great grandmother's mother always kept a Jewish home. She kept kosher when available and always kept a Sabbath. But as their children got older, their Jewish life became more tradition than religion. It was very important to them to connect with Jewish people and to live amongst Jewish people. My great grandfather's Judaism was important to him. He loved going to services when he did, and if he didn't have to work so hard, he would have spent more time at temple. But by coming to America, he had to give up his family, which deeply hurt him. And the picture is the ring that my great grandmother Hannah gave to my great grandfather Jack when he left home, so that he would always have something from her with him. My dad is named after her. And that's it.
Wow. Excellent. Very good. Any similarities that you noticed from our last friend? From Sophia? Did you see any similarities?
I did not.
You did not? You guys are virtually from the same area, right?
I mean, if you go back like great grandparents.
Where you guys came from, Russia and Poland, right?
Yeah,
Hello? Yes? Correct?
Yeah.
correct.
You guys are from the same area. Any questions for Mr. Xander? Hello? Anybody? Sammy? Sophia? Do you have any questions for your friend? Nick?
You said you didn't get much information on your mother's side, right?
No, her parents didn't really have much information because because it was her parents, great grandparents, I'm pretty sure, who went through all of this. So it was
Okay.
really far back and they didn't really ask any questions about it.
Okay, that was going to be my question, but that's totally fine.
So, what was the most interesting, surprising thing that you learned about your family that you didn't know before? Xander?
I am not really sure. Um, that they didn't go like straight to the U.S. They were in trying to find out. They were in Canada. My great grandfather was in Canada first before he went to the U.S.
Yep. Interesting. Yeah. Excellent. Any other questions? Okay. Uh, Sophia, your turn. I mean, Sophia, Sammy, your turn.
I was going to be like, what?
No. Yeah, you don't have to go get. It's your turn. Sammy, you're up. Sammy,
I'm up.
you're up.
Okay. Well, I don't have a slideshow. I just have what I prepared on a sheet.
Okay.
What I learned from my grandma. I didn't have time to make a slideshow. Oh. So this is a when I first started this project, I learned about my grandma's family. It was her grandparents. They lived in Poland, around Poland and Russia. My grandma's grandparents, and Poland, Russia, and I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I got this one. I think I don't remember how to pronounce it. It's New Dural, Germany. I don't remember how to pronounce it. And they lived in around there. My grandma's grandparents. There was my great great grandma and my great great grandfather and my great grandma that lived with them. And they lived in Poland. And as soon as the Holocaust started, they left there. But my great great grandmother had decided to stay in there, and so they moved to around Colorado, and not Colorado, Chicago. And when they as soon as they got there, they spoke no English, and they had no money, and arrived with their clothes on their back. They were able to maintain it because they had moved to a Jewish place in Chicago, and my grandmother was born. my grandmother and grand my grandmother and her brother were born in Chicago, and my great grandma eventually, years after, visited her mom because she had survived through the Holocaust, and they did get a better relationship because they got in a fight before she left to America. And that's not.
Whoa.
It's a bit short.
What's that noise?
What noise?
Somebody's computer's got a lot of sounds going on there. Wow. Okay. So very nice. Did you have any questions? Anybody have any questions?
I do not.
Sophia?
Not really.
So I'm going to ask you the same question. What did you learn about that you didn't know that you thought was interesting?
Well, I every week my family has a family Zoom call, and my grandma and her brother Mike, they are on it too. And I learned when I was on her phone with her talking about this, we were on like an hour call about it a couple weeks ago. She told me that she was born in Chicago, but her brother was not. He was born back in there in Germany.
Wow. Interesting. So I think everybody saw that. Well, I don't think anyone was surprised by this, but I think everybody saw that all of you on your journeys of how you came to this country, nobody came straight to California. Nobody got off a boat from Poland or Russia and was in LA. Everybody started out on the East Coast or in the Midwest and then moved out here. So most of us don't have family who were in California much earlier than the 50s or 60s at the earliest. Jewish community in LA was very small. And most of us came from one section of Europe, Russia and Poland, which actually we call it Russia or Poland because Poland was a country. Then it wasn't a country during the 1800s. It was taken over by Russia. Russia conquered it. Germany conquered part of it. And so for a long time, it wasn't a country. And then after World War II,